One of the things I've really been honing in on is I received this message or calling or this voice about 15 years ago now was the first time I saw it, which was calling me to help the lonely, the battered, the hopeless, the beaten, the bored of the world. And I had no idea what I was being asked to do because it was so foreign to what I was doing at that time. But as I spent years of introspection and trying to figure out what was at the heart of this, I've come to the conclusion that so many people have a profound sense of unmattering. They feel like they're waking up in the morning and they're just going through the motions and that nothing holds significance. And it's interesting, Sharon, because I've interviewed over 40 behavior scientists on the show, everyone from Angela Duckworth to Cass Sunstein, Hal Hirschfeld, Ethan Kross, Don Moore, I mean, you name it. And I asked them, who is doing behavioral science research on the topic of mattering? And Ethan Kross pointed me to the work on self-determination theory, which is a portion of it. But what I found is that there was no one until I talked to a professor in England named Thomas Curran, who talks about perfectionism. And he said, you need to look at the work that Gordon Flett has been doing at the University of York in Toronto. And Gordon was the first person I saw that had been studying mattering. And now I just learned talking to Angela Duckworth a couple of weeks ago that Marty Seligman has made it the last portion of his life to study this because he thinks it's so profound. But my question for you is, I think at the core of many of these things that we're seeing around the world, mental health issues and this loneliness and hopelessness, I think it is this mattering or lack thereof that is somehow at the root of this. Do you see any correlation to that?
I completely agree. And it's beautifully put. Listening to you and thinking about this other book I wrote called Real Change, which came out right in the middle of the pandemic. And I was talking about not only meditation practice and the tools of meditation, but also people who were working, who had a kind of calling for social change in this world, whether they were actually meditators or not, in the kind of strict sense of it. And what I found was really at the core of that ability to stand up and take a stand and try to make a difference in the world from a positive place, not from just hatred or fear, was very much the sense of mattering. I remember talking to a woman who was one of the leaders of the striking fast food worker movement. And I got to meet with several of those people who were striking for minimum wage of, I don't know, I think it was like $15 an hour and the right to unionize. And these were people who were working in the places that we know of and working 40 hours a week, couldn't afford a house. They were often living in shelters and things like that, often weren't paid rightfully. And several of them would say, no one I knew wanted me to try to make a difference. My family would say to me, you have almost nothing right now. If you make waves, you will really have nothing. Don't fight, don't strike. And he said, but I had to do it because I deserve better treatment. And not only that, people like me matter. I look at the younger generation coming up, and I don't want them to feel hopeless. I don't want them to feel that they can't grow and change and get ahead. And so I have to stand up and take that risk and do that. And that kind of feeling of I matter, and it's not in a divisive way. I matter more than anybody else. I certainly matter more than you. And it's not in a way that was putting anybody down, even people who were in charge of their work environment. But it was saying, you know what? I can love myself enough or care for myself enough that I can say, this should change. And it was so beautiful for me to see. That seemed to me to be really at the core of their ability to really be courageous.